everything is going great, and then it all caves in. Now what do? Let's talk about it with actor Kevin Sorbo on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
That's the name of the program, and I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. One of the things I've learned in my long life is that every day the world rolls over on top of somebody who was just sitting on top of it. Our guest today, Kevin Sorbo, may be fit, but Matthew Porter is here, and he has the body of a god. That would be Buddha. This week, Matthew started teaching video production at a local school. Becoming a teacher is all a part of his get poor slow scheme.
It's all coming together.
And then our producer, Jinx, is working hard in the little glass booth. Jinx, you dressed just for us, didn't you?
Well, when this airs, I'm going to be in Crystal River on the water, floating in a boat. So I figured I'd just go ahead and take myself there mentally.
When you get
Let
back,
y'all know what it's going to look like.
when you get back, are you going to have a fish dinner for all of us?
Depends on which side of the boat I put the nets on.
There you go.
Nice.
If you can get him to show and tell you, you might end up drowning with all the fish.
I might be able to walk on water. Better careful.
Our video director, John Myers, is in the tech bunker. John also handles everything from IT to fixing our smoke detectors at Key Life. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, John Myers probably already fixed it. And then Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. I don't know how much George can bench press, but I've seen him stretch $1 pretty far. And then Kathy, of course, is the soft feminine side of the program. She bakes cookies that even Hercules would be powerless to resist.
I was just thinking that we're probably the only company left in the world that needs to have an IT director that can fix smoke detectors. That's because not only do you smoke your pipe, but if anybody ever says anything about it, you just go straight for the smoke detector and blow the smoke at it.
That's true. It wakes everybody up because everybody on this staff spends a significant portion of their time sleeping. I've been looking forward to this because I'm such a pop culture guru.
Yeah.
And if you believe that, you'll believe. But I have seen Hercules.
You did?
Yeah, but, I don't spend a lot of time watching popular television. But I know about this program. I've seen it. And what I've seen of it was quite impressive. And irritating. When you look the way I look and you're as old as I am, you don't have any hair, you go watch the shopping channel. It's a lot better. Kevin Sorbo is an actor, as you know. He's also a director and an author. Early in his career, Kevin worked internationally as a model, but soon followed his passion for acting. And that eventually led him to starring in the popular series Hercules and countless other TV and film roles. His book, and generally when I mention somebody's book, I say I now hold it in my nicotine-stained fingers. However, this morning I read it on my computer's screen, so I sat in front of my nicotine-stained computer screen and was absolutely fascinated. The name of the book, by the way, and you ought to get this because it's the real deal, is True Strength, My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal, and how nearly dying saved my life. Kevin, it's good to have you with us.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I feel like, after spending a morning reading your book, I feel like I spent the morning in a hospital, man. And after listening to your descriptions and those of your wife, I've decided that if a voice ever tells me not to do something, I'm not doing it. I just want you to know that. I'm referring to a place, and maybe, Kevin, you'll want to talk about it, when you had gone to your doctor and he was going to manipulate your neck, and a voice, I assume an echo, very deep and in Hebrew, said, don't do this. And you said, hang it on your ear. And you did it, and you almost died. Tell us that story first, and then we'll get into some other things.
Well, it was coming in the last few months of season 5 on Hercules, and I lived in New Zealand for the 7-year run of the series. That was beautiful New Zealand. If no one's ever been there, please put it on your bucket list. It's one of the most amazing countries in the world, and the people are wonderful, and the food is great. And you got the Tasman Sea on one side, and you got the Pacific on the other, and it's just wonderful. But I was there. I was doing most of my own stunts on the series because my ego said that I could. And it got to a point that my left shoulder was just killing me, and I just chalked it up for all the falls I was taking and all the hits I was taking, and I didn't pay much attention to it, even though I knew it was bugging me. It was just really just getting to a point that it was very painful, and I was getting really cold, numb fingers as well on my left hand. So when I finally got back to LA, I was doing promotional work for my first big budget movie for was the father of Conan in the books and in the comic books. Even though Arnold Schwarzenegger is older than me, apparently I am his dad. So,
all those rumors are true. You are the father.
So I went to see my regular doctor, and he found a lump up on my left shoulder. And at the time, he didn't tell me what he thought it was. He told me afterwards, but he thought I had cancer. So he said, we're going to have to do a little check on this later. I'm going to set up a doctor's appointment for you, and we're going to take a look and see what that is. Well, before that, going to the hospital, I went to see my chiropractor. Now, in the 8 years I've seen this guy, he's never cracked my neck because I don't like my neck cracked. He can crack it in my body. He knows. I mean, I had it cracked years ago a couple times by another chiropractor, and I hated it. I just didn't like the feel, what it did. So I went to see him, and as I'm laying on the table, I hear a voice inside my head saying, don't let him crack your neck. And I thought, well, that's weird. Why am I hearing this voice? He's never cracked my neck before. The voice came back louder, more urgent. Don't let him crack your neck. So while I'm arguing with his voice, my chiropractor did ultimately the thing that broke me, something he's never done before. He cracked my neck. And that lump in my shoulder ended up being an aneurysm that had been spitting out blood clots for months into my left hand, suffocating the flow of blood into my hand. That's why my fingers were getting cold, because the blood flow wasn't as strong as it should be. But 3 of the clots with that crack went up into my brain because he cracked it from left to right. So it forced the blood flow just for a second to go up into my brain. And the three strokes I suffered, one was to my vision, which I still have a 10% loss in both eyes, and the other 2 went into my balance. Now, obviously, I'm lucky that it could have killed me right away. It could have put me in a wheelchair the rest of my life. Could have taken away anything, my whole left side, whatever. But it's still, the balance issue was pretty huge. It took me 4 months to learn how to balance and walk again, and then it was another probably 2 years before I really started feeling improvement. And that 3rd year going into it, I think because of my the age I was in my 30s and the physical fitness level I was because of the series, I think that helped me recover better than if this had happened to me when I was 80 years old. So, it was a long road, and I didn't want to write the book. I'll be honest. My wife sort of bugged me to write it because she said, you got to understand, Kevin, people look up to you. I mean, at the time, we were the most watched TV show in the world in 176 countries, and people look at you.
Kevin, you keep
showing that this. Pardon?
You keep fading out, and I'm not sure why that is. We'll edit that part, but keep talking.
Okay. And I decided to finally, write the book and put it out there. And my wife was completely right. I mean, I've been on the speaking circuit for about 7. Thought never be open to me. I never thought about being a public speaker, a guy going out and speaking in churches and universities and medical institutions. It's been interesting. But the book, I've had people come up to me saying, your book has motivated me to get past my cancer, to get past my car crash that did this, get past my head injury, get past whatever. I get emails all the time through my fan sites as saying, your book has made me realize, okay, I gotta, it happened, as my wife always said, whenever I got down, it happened. Now, what are you going to do about it? And she gave me that Pittsburgh, New York tough love. So I just, I think the combination of all that and my faith, here's the thing. I had faith my entire life. I was always a Christian, but I never needed faith until this happened to me.
Yeah,
and trust me, I had some battles with God because
I bet you did.
Everything was bad. We blame God, family, friends, everybody else. When the reality is, you got to look in the mirror. There's where the problem is.
We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. Meanwhile, this is very, very hard work, and periodically we have to rest up, get some milk and cookies, and then we also have to pay for this. So just be still, don't go anywhere, there's more. Listening to Steve Brown, etc. Our guest is Kevin Sorbo. His book is called True Strength, My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal, and How Nearly Dying Saved My Life.
Kevin, in some of the stuff that I read, it said that you were a high school athlete and all that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden you appear on the scene as an actor in Hercules, and so obviously you did not go from high school athlete to Hercules overnight. What transpired during that period of time, and was it a slow, gradual thing that made you decide that this was the area that you wanted to pursue as far as acting, or how did all that come to be?
Well, actually, I got the bug bite back when I was just 11 years old. I went to a play. I grew up just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I grew up in a really small town called Mound, Minnesota, about 20 miles west of Minneapolis on the beautiful shores of Lake Minnetonka, and we were home to Tonka Toys. There you go. Trivia.
There you go.
Trivia. But we went into the Guthrie Theater in downtown Minneapolis. The Guthrie Theater is a very famous theater for people that are in that theatrical world. A lot of people from Broadway come out and perform there. And it was The Merchant of Venice. It was Shakespeare. I don't know what the heck they were saying because it was Shakespeare. But I was completely mesmerized by the performances and the actors and watching everybody else being mesmerized themselves. So on the ride home, my mom said, "So what do you think?" And I said, Mom, I think I'm going to be an actor. And she gave me that lovely, mother pat on the thigh. That's nice, dear, so. But I was a jock. I grew up in a very jockey town. I played football, basketball, baseball, and golf because of my father being a teacher at Summers. He worked at a golf course, so I got hooked at golf at a very early age. So that at this stage in my life, my two favorite things to do are golf and fishing. So there you go. But I kept it kind of quiet because we sort of made fun of those guys in the drama class through junior high and high school. And even though I wanted to be there, you fall into that world of cliquishness and being a jock and all. So it wasn't until I got to college, took a minor in drama, that I really started pursuing that dream, pursuing that calling. I started doing a lot of commercials. Minneapolis, St. Paul area is home to a lot of big companies, from Best Buy to Target to General Mills, Pillsbury, 3M. So there's a lot of commercial work within that area. So I got that all important Screen Actors Guild card, that SAG card that every actor fights to get. And so that was the easy part. I know you guys mentioned earlier that I was a model, but that sort of was an accident because that's not what I wanted to do. But I started dating a model, and she dragged me, not kicking and screaming, but to Europe after college. And I was going to spend 3 months, and I ended up spending 3.5 years of my life over there. And I have no regrets. It made me grow up, and I became very good friends with Gianni Versace. May he rest in peace. He was a wonderful guy to me, and I did a lot of work up in Germany, I guess, because of my height and my size, being 6'3" and 225 pounds. I fit the jock mold of the big people of Germany, because when I went into the gym, everybody there looked bigger than me. So, and I was a pretty big guy. So. And I had a blast. I mean, it was wonderful. I lived in Paris, lived in Munich, lived in Milan, lived in Zurich and London. And, just 3.5 years that zipped by. And I finally made my way to LA to really, really, dive into it and take the acting classes that I wanted to take. And I was lucky. I never had to work another job. I did a lot of commercials and started doing guest spots on shows like Cheers and Commish and Murder, She Wrote and things before I got Hercules. Obviously, that was my big break. But I was very fortunate to be one of the few people that never had to go out there and be a bouncer or wait tables or do anything like that.
Kevin, in the book it's really enjoyable. The process of paying your dues, going out for auditions, the slings and arrows of all of that. It's really clear you have like a really intense work ethic, and it's fun to kind of vicariously read along those ups and downs, knowing that you're hustling to make it all happen. That's what creates kind of some dramatic tension when all of these physical ailments go down and you're just on the verge of starting a feature film, and there's so many questions. And so there's like, you could tell this fear of like, what's going on with my body, but also there's this second category of fear, which is I've worked so hard to get here and I might lose it. I think I probably have to hide what's going on with me. Can you describe that kind of tension and those two different fears that were, both in play with you?
Well, it was frustrating. I mean, I railed against God when this happened. My career was just really taking off, and I was for Arnold as their next big superstar, action hero. And I had another movie waiting right after Call the Conqueror. And obviously the strokes happened before I had a chance to even, do that movie. I had to drop out of that movie. And that was a killer for me. And, that puts an onus on you against, when Hollywood looks at it and says, well, wait a minute. Okay, maybe this guy's done already. We can't hire him. I was grateful that Universal kept the show going with Hercules. I mean, after my 4 months of rehab and learning how to sort of balance and walk again, went back to New Zealand to start season 6 and season 7. And I went from a 14-hour workday down to 1 hour a day, and slowly worked my way back up again. I mean, it took a long time for me to get back up to any kind of a normal day. I mean, I was working 14 hours a day, then lifting weights 2 hours a day. It was very typical for me to have a 17 to 18-hour door-to-door day. And, there's no complaint there. I loved it. I loved that they were my family. I wasn't married at that time. I got married to my wife actually just 4 months after the strokes. But I was grateful that they kept it going. And wasn't out of the goodness of the heart. I mean, I realized that the show was a big moneymaker for them. But for me, it gave a huge light at the end of a very long, lonely, and dark tunnel. And it was motivation for me to fight through. I mean, every neurologist I saw, every doctor I saw, everything they told me to do to help my recovery, I did 10 times more than that. And that's really, a salute to my mom and dad. I mean, I grew up like in a small town, Midwest USA, and my parents were, my dad was a school teacher, junior high. My kids, she became a full-time mom. But they always taught us hard work. There was always a hard work ethic. There was always like, don't expect handouts. You do it yourself. You work hard. I started paper out when I was just 9 years old, and I delivered 6 days a week for 7 years in the Minnesota winters when it's 20 below outside for 4 months out of the year, And I just learned a hard work ethic, and that was because of the upbringing from my wonderful mom and dad. I also said my dad sort of ruled the family with soft thunder hands, And I think I I kind of do the same thing. I mean, my wife's really the tough one with the kids, but when the kids see me get angry, then they know they better do what I ask them to do. So.
Man, you don't want Hercules for your father. That could scare the spit out of you. I'll be interested, and we're coming up on a break. On the other side of the break, you said you had a number of fights with God, and I get that. I think when people go through hard times, if they don't say, why me, and cuss and spit, they're not normal. But frankly, Kevin, if God didn't have anything to do with this, then you got a bigger problem than you had before. So maybe God did do it to you because he likes you a whole lot. We'll get the rest of the story on the other side of the break. Meanwhile, get this book, read it. You won't be able to put it down. True Strength, My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal, and how nearly dying saved my life. Don't go anywhere. Talking to Kevin Sorbo, and his book is True Strength, My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal. I'm going to write a book called My Journey from Mere Mortal to Mere Mortal.
To lesser mortal.
It's a short story.
And this is a book. I wish we had time to go into it in detail, but it's a pretty detailed description of a guy who worked his tail off to get where he was successful, and then God or somebody or providence or stupidity took it away from him. And what happened as a result of that? Kevin, before the break, I brought up God. You know, we talk about him a lot on this broadcast. But I was saying, you fought with God. How could you? Why me? Did I do something that bad? Kind of discussion during those years when things were really falling apart. But now, from the position of being a bit older and somewhat wiser, do you look back and see God's hand in it?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, that was the voice that was warning me. Like I've got agnostic and atheist friends, and they said that wasn't God. That was a gut feeling. I said, call it what you want. I heard the voice. I mean, I said, how many times when you were in college, when you be like an idiot and decide to walk home from someplace and cut down some alleyway, and even your gut said, don't walk down that alleyway. I mean, so
Yeah.
The warning was there. I didn't pay attention to it, but it did open, like I said, a completely new door for me. But yeah, I remember it was a very hot and humid night in Las Vegas when I was doing my recovery, and it was a full moon was out, and I just went out there and basically howled at the moon, and I wept, and I just was so frustrated that my brain was doing what it was doing to me, because it was constant, just the pain and the headaches and the generator sound, this buzzing sound in my brain that lasted 24 hours a day for almost 2 years before it started to subside. I told my wife, I said, I finally understand suicide. And she looked at me and said, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to kill myself. But I'm a strong-willed person. But there are people with this sound in my brain all the time, and the sensation of falling backwards all the time, 24 hours a day. It didn't matter if I was seated or standing or laying down. I was falling backwards. That wouldn't be able to handle this. And I wrestled with God, but my brother was a collegiate champion wrestler. And I'll tell you, I'd rather fight him because God's going to beat you every time. So,
You don't have a chance.
He's got a great first move. He took me right down. And it just came down, like I said, I've always had faith, and I never needed faith until this happened to me. And it was an amazing, different journey for me, but it did open a whole new door. And I'm grateful that the series kept going. I'm grateful that the recovery happened, that it did. I still have issues, but most people people and as a whole wouldn't be able to tell because, I can do what I want to do before, but I'm not the same person. That I know. And it's like a giant lightning bolt just came in and cracked whatever bubble I was living in and said, welcome to the real world.
Wow. Kevin, just now and then in the book, you mentioned growing up in a Christian religious household, Lutheran, if memory is serving. But the pastor that you were under as a kid had a certain tone, a certain kind of vibe that he was kind of communicating. And even as a kid, you're like, I don't think this guy is completely on target with this. What was his approach? What did he seem to convey, whether he knew it or not?
Well, Pastor Sandus was, rest in peace as well. I mean, it was one level and it was just straight out of the Bible, which is fine, but there was not in my world. Come on, okay. What does this passage have to do with today, with today's world? How does it relate? Because there's always something relatable with it. That's what's so amazing about the Bible. But by the time I was 13 years old, he was boring as boring could be. And I told my parents this, I was 12 years old. I said, my gosh, this guy, I remember as a little kid, when you're 7, 8 years old, you got picked sometime to walk down the aisle in front of all the people in congregation. You got to light all the candles and you wore the miniature pastor robe. You got to sit in a little tiny pew next to the pastor the whole time. And I would watch him from the pews that he would always put his head up against the wall behind him and look skyward. And before he did his sermon. So as a 7-year-old, I asked him one time, I whispered when I was sitting next to him, I go, you always do that. Why do you do that? He said, I'm praying to God that helped me with a good sermon. And being a 7-year-old, of course, I said, well, why doesn't he help you?
That's why all this happened, man. You think you didn't listen to God's voice, but man, you offended him when you were 7 years old.
That's why I think, this is where kids say the darndest thing comes from, right? So he told my parents scolded me, but they were laughing the whole time. So.
Oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming.
Wow. But then we had a youth pastor, Pastor Lee came along, and this guy was amazing. He was in early 20s, and we had a youth room for teenagers, and he came along to talk to him one-on-one or in small groups, and just everything was sort of relatable to today. He said, well, I got this going on. You'd find a passage and say, well, let's look at this. And you go, wow, okay, this is maybe something you can look at, and maybe you should handle it this way instead of that way, So
you had some good roots.
Yeah,
that's a good place. We'll talk more about Kevin's faith journey, why he's been blacklisted in some places on the other side of the break, so don't go anywhere. And the name of the book is True Strength, My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal. How nearly dying saved my life. Don't go anywhere. Talking with Kevin Sorbo, you know him as Hercules, and he's got a great book, A Clear Witness, authentic, and pretty scary. The title of the book is True Strength, My Journey from Hercules to Mere Mortal.
Kevin, I identify too with, I do all my own stunts as well. I recently tripped over the dog and almost fell in the pool, and I didn't have anybody else do that.
Sitting's a tough one too. Sitting down.
Yeah, hitting the chair every time. That's a hard one. Steve just mentioned that the blacklisting in Hollywood. You were quoted as saying that you've been experiencing some blacklisting as an outspoken Christian. Tell us about that.
Well, I think the combination of Christian and being a conservative is a double leprosy sort of attack in Hollywood. So Yeah, I mean, it's there. Look, I had 2 big long-running series. After Hercules, I did Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda for 5 years. We were the #1 show in first-run syndication. Um, it's they just stopped calling. And it's amazing to me in an industry that screams for tolerance that they really have no tolerance. And it's sad to me because I don't, I have agnostic friends, I have atheist friends, we have great debates, great talks, we're still friends. And I don't get, we live in a world now that's so angry and so filled with hate. And it doesn't matter what I post on Twitter. You get people. I could say it's a beautiful day, and then someone will post, "You should die." I mean, it's amazing to me that, and I feel sad for these people because these are people psychology of it all, but these are really unhappy people, and I think the anger and hate that they have just puts them on a darker spiral to more anger and hate. It doesn't help them. It does nothing for them. That we have all this anger and hate towards people we don't even know. It's crazy. So have I felt that in Hollywood? Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for independent movies, I wouldn't have a career. And thank God for independent movies. I mean, I've shot since Andromeda finished, wrapped up in 2005. I've shot over 60 movies. And, it's probably 10 I wish I didn't do, but, it's happened.
Some of those other doing your own stunts, huh?
Yeah. But I'm grateful to keep the career going and keep things going. I've got 5 movies in the can done. Hopefully 2 come out this year and the other 3 come out next year. I just booked 2 more finish out this year. So they're coming to me now. And these are little independent movies that have, for the most part, good messages. They don't have to. I mean, I think all movies are faith-based movies. Every movie has an agenda, right? If you're an atheist, that's a pretty darn strong faith you got there to believe in absolutely nothing. Well, I think Christians need more faith like that, but I'm grateful to keep doing what I'm doing. I can't complain.
Kevin, you talked about independent films, and very recently you just moved into the director's chair with Let There Be Light. What's that transition be like, or what's that transition been like as far as not just being in front of the camera, but behind the camera and calling the shots?
Well, I actually started directing back on season 3 of Hercules. So I've been a DGA member for a while now, over 20 years. But I love it. If you say you got to make a choice, then I'll go with acting because that's still my passion. I still get excited to be on the set. But Let There Be Light did very well. If you have people haven't seen it, please get it at Walmart or stream it on Amazon. Walmart loves it. They're going to do a big push at Christmas time and Easter in 2020. And my latest movie, Let There Be Light, is really in God's Not Dead, I played a university college professor. But in Let There Be Light, I play like a Dawkins Hitchens type of guy. I'm a world famous atheist, and he has a life-changing event that changes his worldview. But my most recent movie, Miracle in East Texas, is not like in your face. I understand that people get tired. You better become a Christian or you're going to go to hell. I mean, people don't want to hear that stuff. They don't want it forced on them, and I get it. So I want to do movies that have a solid message in there but appeal to everybody, and that's what Miracle in East Texas does. And we're screening it right now. It's been interesting, the awards we've won at different film festivals. Actually, in Orlando, we won Best Family Film. Nice. And then in Houston, it won Best Romantic Comedy. In Franklin, it just won Best Christian Movie. And in Vegas, it won Best Narrative Film. So they can't pigeonhole it in one thing. It's it's a wonderful movie. It stars me. It stars John Ratzenberger, who happened to be in What If as well. People remember John, of course, from his most famous role as Cliff from Cheers. And we have Lou Gossett Jr., Academy winner for Officer and Gentleman. And we have Tyler Mane. People know him from the WWF world, but he's also very famous from his role as Sabretooth in all the X-Men movies. And it's just a wonderful movie set in 1930, inspired by a true story. And we're hoping to get this in theaters soon. We're looking for P&A money right now, print and advertising money, because people don't realize every movie you do, you got to get it. You have to pay to get it in the theaters. So when Hollywood does a $300 million Avenger movie, they have all the money in the world to throw it in the theaters. Us little indies that shoot $2 to $3 million movies, we got to raise another $2 million to try to get it into 800 screens. So it's a tough battle. So any of your listeners out there want to help us out, KevinSorbo.net. Go to Kevin.
I don't believe God's hand is tied. I think you're creating another universe. You're creating an artistic one that has integrity and depth. and speaks to the universal human truth. And that's a good thing. And I don't believe that voice is going to be silent no matter how much hatred and how much you are blacklisted. There's kind of a hopeful side of you that makes me feel better about this whole thing. Are you hopeful?
Yeah, I am hopeful. It is interesting because when Let There Be Light did as well as it did in theaters, I got a call from, of all places, Netflix. And Netflix had me come in. I met with their theatrical division and television division, and they said, hey, we know you have a strong foot into this inspirational world, and we want to create an inspirational division of Netflix. And I said, well, it'd be a good idea because you got 80 million households out there that want to see movies that have a good message, and they don't have to be a Christian message. Just, morals and values are something that we all should have. And, so they haven't pulled the trigger yet. I've been talking with them for about a year now. We're going back and forth, but the channels are still open. And I'm wearing them down, and I think they're going to see the light here eventually as well to say, look, I used to get stopped all the time. I travel so much through airports and I'm in hotels, and people would stop me. I loved Hercules, I loved Andromeda. 80% of the time now, people say, please make more movies like Soul Surfer and Let There Be Light and God's Not Dead, please. That's what these are the people that want this stuff for their family. They don't want all the stuff coming out of Hollywood that has the violence and there's so much violence coming in all these movies and so much anger and hatred and over-sexualized. And it's like people said, I don't want my 10-year-old watching this stuff. So I'm trying to do movies that really just have a positive message out there. And hopefully people will support
Kevin?
it.
We're out of time. But
I want them to be part of this. Okay.
Kevin, it's been great to have you with us. I hope we can do this again. And we rise up and call you blessed. You keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep rising up and calling you blessed. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Guys, we're going to back out for just a little bit and come back for the final segment. So don't go anywhere. We'll tell you who we're going to do it unto next week. And it'll be somebody famous, somebody good-looking, almost as good-looking as Hercules. Don't go anyplace. What I said to Kevin is true. He does present a degree of hope. And I spent last week a weekend at the Billy Graham Training Center teaching. And the subject of that whole weekend, and there were 4 sessions, was an awakening in America with a question mark about it. And frankly, as evil grows, and it is, and unless you've had your head in the sand, it is. It's pretty scary. I loved what Kevin said. If I say it's a beautiful day, somebody will say die, or I hate you, or something. And he's right about social media, and you start focusing on the weeds, and you'll be suicidal because it's really bad. But don't ever forget that the flowers grow with the weeds. Jesus told a parable about that, and God's not going to mess with it until he finally does the harvest, or to mix the metaphor, blows the whistle on a shooting match and says it's time. But until then, there's going to be a rise of evil, and there's also at the same time going to be a rise of good. And Kevin Sorbo is a good example of the latter. The movies he's producing and directing, the actors that are getting involved, the way so many millions of people are fed up with the garbage and are crying out for something brings money to the table. And when money comes to the table, there are people who create the product. And Kevin is one of them. And I don't know about you, but this hour with him gives me a little bit of hope. And you do that, Matthew, too.
Yes.
With some of the films that you have done. I think God is doing stuff that you're not always familiar with. And the main reason I believe that is because ain't nothing working. And unless you're stupid, you know it. It's really not. The suicide rate's going through the roof. The addictions, the hatred, the division. And people are saying, this isn't working for us. There's got to be something more than this. And somebody like Kevin points you to the something more than this. Are you going to have somebody next week who'll point us to the something more than this?
Indeed. Jessica Thompson's going to be with us next week. That is, she's been with us several times in the past. Elise Fitzpatrick's daughter, and she has
One of my favorites.
Yeah, she has a new book out called How to Help Your Anxious Teen, Discovering the Surprising Sources of Their Worries and Fears. And she's very, very capable of dealing with this, and she's the mother of multiple teenagers.
Nah, I didn't know you could help teenagers. This will be a good program for all you parents. We're out of here, but we're going to come back next week, same time, same place. Why not join us? And between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. And that gives you a wide, wide berth.